The morning sun glared off the chrome signage of Baker's Auto Service, a small but proud mechanic shop sitting on the edge of a busy Texas highway. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of oil and hot metal, the steady rhythm of tools clanking against steel echoing off the concrete walls. Posters of muscle cars lined the office walls, and behind the counter stood Rick Baker, the owner, tall, broad-shouldered, with grease-stained hands, and an attitude hardened by years of running his business his way. Rick prided himself on knowing cars and people. He liked to say he could tell a good customer by the look of their shoes. Polished meant money, dusty meant trouble. He wasn't a bad man in his own mind, just old school, as he called it. That's when the door chimed. A tall black man stepped inside, wearing faded gray overalls and a clean blue cap. He carried a clipboard under one arm and looked around calmly, taking in the spotless reception desk and the faint hum of engines in the back. Rick looked up from behind the counter. "We're kind of busy today, pal," he said without smiling. "If you're looking for cheap oil changes, try down the road." The man gave a polite nod. "No, sir, I'm here on—" Rick cut him off. Yeah, I get it. You're probably with delivery or something. Just drop it off by the bay door." The man hesitated, clearly about to explain, but Rick was already turning away to call out to his lead mechanic. "Hey, Joe, make sure the Beamer gets priority. The guy's waiting on it." The visitor stood silently for a few moments, his eyes scanning the shop, the clean tools, the inspection charts on the wall, the certified by Texas State Vehicle Authority plaque near the office door. He took note of everything without saying a word. Finally, he said evenly, "You run this shop yourself?" Rick turned, frowning. "That's right. 20 years and counting." "Why?" The man nodded thoughtfully. "Looks like a solid operation. You must be proud." Rick smirked. "Yeah, well, you don't keep doors open this long without knowing what you're doing." The man smiled slightly, almost to himself. "That's good to hear." Just then, one of the customers, a woman in a business suit, entered the shop. Rick instantly changed demeanor, smiling wide. "Morning, ma'am. Here for the alignment?" "Joe'll take care of you right away." He handed her paperwork, joking easily, his tone polite and polished. When she left, he turned back toward the man in overalls, his friendliness gone like a switch flipped off. "Look," Rick said, sighing, "if you've got a form or whatever you're dropping off, leave it here. We don't have time for a tour or anything. I've got paying customers to deal with." The man looked at him quietly, expression unreadable. "You sure you don't have a few minutes?" Rick frowned. "Honest buddy, I told you. I don't have time for walk-ins or random inspections. Unless you've got an appointment, you're wasting my morning." The man tilted his head. "Random inspections?" he repeated softly. Interesting choice of words. Rick didn't catch it. "Yeah, well, that's what we get when people wander in unannounced." He gave a short laugh and waved his rag dismissively. "Come back when you've got something real." The man nodded once calmly and turned toward the door. But before leaving, he paused by the framed certificate on the wall, the one that read, "Licensed by the State Department of Motor Vehicles, annual renewal required." He studied it for a moment, then glanced back over his shoulder. "Nice shop," he said evenly. "I'll be in touch soon." Rick gave a dismissive grunt, already busy shouting to his crew, Yeah, sure thing, boss." The man stepped outside, the bright sun catching the silver letters on his clipboard. As he crossed the lot, he opened it, revealing the seal of the Texas State Vehicle Inspection and Compliance Division. His name was Derek Lawson, Senior Field Inspector, and Baker's Auto Service was on his list for a full audit. The next morning at Baker's Auto Service, the shop buzzed with the usual noise. Air wrenches hissing, classic rock on the radio, and Rick barking orders from the office. Everything was as it always was, loud, confident, and careless. At around 10:15, the front door swung open. Carla, the receptionist, looked up from her desk as a man in a gray postal uniform entered, holding a clipboard. "Delivery for Mr. Baker," he said. "Yeah, that's me," Rick called out, wiping his hands with a rag as he approached. He signed the form without looking and tore open the envelope casually, then froze mid-motion. Across the top of the document, in bold blue letters, it read, "State Vehicle Inspection and Compliance Division. Notice of Audit." Rick blinked, his stomach tightening. The letter was stamped and signed, "Inspector assigned, Derek Lawson." His mind went blank for a moment. "Lawson," he muttered. Then it hit him. The tall black man in overalls from the day before. The one he'd brushed off like an errand boy. "Aw, hell," he whispered under his breath. "Everything okay, boss?" Joe, his lead mechanic, asked from the garage bay. Rick forced a laugh. "Yeah, just some paperwork from the state. Routine stuff." But his voice cracked slightly. Joe raised an eyebrow. Rick retreated to his office, closing the door behind him. He read the letter again carefully. The audit was scheduled for Friday morning, 2 days away. The notice explained that the inspection would cover licenses, safety procedures, employee certifications, environmental compliance, and record keeping. In other words, everything. He rubbed his temples, pacing. "Great," he muttered. "Just great. And I probably ticked the guy off before he even opened his damn clipboard." He picked up the phone and called the number listed on the letter. After a few rings, a calm voice answered. "Texas State Vehicle Inspection Division, this is Lawson." Rick froze, his mouth suddenly dry. Hi there, Mr. Lawson. This is, Rick Baker, from Baker's Auto." "Yes, Mr. Baker," Derek said evenly. "I remember." Rick cleared his throat, trying to sound casual. "About this audit notice, just wanted to make sure we're all squared away. No mix-ups or anything." "No mix-up," Derek replied. His tone was polite but firm, almost professional to the point of unsettling. "I'll be there Friday at 9. We'll go through your certifications, employee records, and shop safety standards." Right, Rick said quickly. "Just making sure. Appreciate the heads up." "You're welcome, sir. I'll see you then." The line clicked dead. Rick exhaled sharply, tossing the phone onto his desk. He felt his face heat up, not from anger, but embarrassment. He'd treated the man like a delivery worker, like someone beneath notice. And now, that same man held the power to shut down his entire business. By lunchtime, the whole crew knew. Carla read the notice while filing invoices. Joe overheard Rick's phone call. And within an hour, everyone was whispering. "Isn't that the same guy who came in yesterday?" Joe asked quietly. "Yeah," Carla said. "Rick thought he was some driver." Joe whistled low. "Oof, that's bad karma right there." Rick pretended not to hear, but every comment landed like a jab. By the afternoon, he'd already started barking orders, desperate to clean things up. "Make sure the waste oil's labeled right, and somebody fix that exit light. It's been out for weeks." The shop, usually messy but functional, turned into a whirlwind of panic. Rick checked every shelf, every document, every fire extinguisher tag. He didn't sleep that night, just sat in his living room with a beer, thinking about how fast respect can turn to regret. When Friday finally came, he arrived an hour early. The place was spotless, every surface scrubbed, every employee nervously tidy. At precisely 9 o'clock, the door opened, and Derek Lawson stepped inside. He wasn't wearing the same overalls this time. He wore a crisp navy shirt with the official state badge pinned to his chest, black slacks, and polished shoes. He carried his clipboard again, but this time it carried weight. "Good morning, Mr. Baker," Derek said calmly. "I trust you got my notice." Rick straightened, forcing a smile. "Morning, sir. Yeah, I sure did. We've been looking forward to your visit." Derek gave a polite nod, his expression unreadable. "Let's begin then, shall we?" As he walked past the counter, clipboard in hand, Rick felt a cold pit in his stomach. Every inch of the shop suddenly looked different under the inspector's gaze. Sharper, more revealing. He realized too late that the man he'd ignored wasn't beneath him. He'd just been watching. And now, the real inspection, not just of his business, but of his character, was about to begin. The clock above the office door ticked steadily as Derek Lawson walked through Baker's Auto Service with quiet authority. His clipboard never left his hand, his expression calm but unreadable. Every few steps, he'd jot something down. A note here, a mark there, while the faint squeal of pneumatic tools echoed from the back bays. Rick followed him closely, trying to sound confident, but failing to hide the nervous edge in his voice. "Like I said, we've been around 20 years, got regulars from all over. Never had a single issue with the state before." Derek didn't look up. "Then this should be easy," he said. His tone was polite but clipped, professional. "Let's start with your certifications. ASE licenses, environmental compliance, disposal records. All current?" "Of course," Rick said quickly. "Right this way." He led Derek into his cramped office, pulling open a filing cabinet and flipping through binders. His fingers trembled slightly as he tried to find the right folder. He hadn't been this nervous in years, not since the first time he'd applied for his shop license. Derek stood silently, watching. His presence was steady, his patience unnerving. Rick finally found the folder and handed it over. Derek took it, flipping through the pages with meticulous precision. He paused once. This fire extinguisher inspection? Last done in February? Rick frowned. That can't be right. He double-checked, his throat tightening. The date was 7 months old. State requires it every 6, Derek said calmly, jotting something on his clipboard. You're out of compliance by 31 days. Rick swallowed. All right, I'll get it handled today. Good, Derek said simply, moving on. They toured the shop next. Derek stopped at every workstation, checking the oil disposal tanks, the spill containment, the lift safety tags, and the first aid kit. Each time he made quiet notes. Rick tried to make small talk, but Derek barely responded. When they reached the rear storage room, Derek crouched down and examined a container labeled Used Oil Filters. It was half full, but the lid was cracked. State regulations require sealed containers for hazardous waste, Derek said, tapping the clipboard lightly. Even minor leaks contaminate the area. You aware of that? Rick sighed. Yeah, I know. We've been meaning to replace that one. Derek nodded, expression neutral. No, meaning to, or avoiding until someone made you? Rick hesitated, then said quietly, Guess the second one. Derek's eyes met his for the first time. They weren't angry, just disappointed. And somehow, that cut deeper. They continued the inspection in silence. Every corner of the shop felt smaller, heavier. For the first time, Rick noticed how much he'd let slide, how many things he'd brushed off, how much pride had turned into neglect. When they finished, Derek stood near the counter, writing his final notes. Rick cleared his throat. Listen, about the other day, he began. When you came by, I didn't realize who you were. Derek looked up slowly. No, you didn't. Rick shifted uncomfortably. I just thought you were some guy coming in to sell something. You know how it is. We get all kinds of people wandering in. Derek set the clipboard down. And how do you treat them? Rick froze. The question hit harder than any citation could. He started, then stopped. He rubbed the back of his neck. Not always the way I should, I guess. Derek studied him for a moment, then spoke quietly. Mr. Baker, I've been in this job long enough to know when someone's trying to clean up fast before I arrive. And I've seen worse. Shops that cut corners, falsify records, endanger customers. But this, he paused, choosing his words carefully. This isn't just about paperwork. It's about respect. For people. For the work. For the rules that keep everyone safe. Rick nodded slowly. I get that. Do you? Derek asked. His voice wasn't angry but firm, the kind of tone that demanded reflection, not defense. Rick took a deep breath. I didn't treat you right when you came in, and that's on me. No excuses. For a long moment, Derek said nothing. Then, finally, he nodded. All right. He picked up his clipboard again. Here's what's going to happen. You've got 30 days to correct your compliance issues. Disposal, fire safety, training certificates. I'll come back for a follow-up inspection. If everything checks out, we close the file. Rick exhaled, relief flooding his chest. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Derek met his gaze evenly. Don't thank me. Just do it right. He turned toward the door, but before stepping out, he paused. One more thing, he said. When you see a man in overalls, don't assume he works for you. Sometimes he's the one checking if you're doing your job. And with that, Derek left, calm, steady, and dignified. Rick stood there, staring at the open door long after it closed. The shop was quiet now, the radio silent, the sound of tools replaced by the hum of self-reckoning. He walked to the window and watched Derek's state car pull away, the seal gleaming in the sunlight. For the first time in years, Rick didn't feel like the boss. He felt like a man who'd been given a second chance, not just to fix his shop, but to fix himself. He grabbed his work gloves and headed to the back, calling out to his crew, Joe, grab a wrench. We're replacing that oil tank. Today. The following week at Baker's Auto Service felt different. The usual easy banter was gone. The air was heavy but focused, like a workshop full of men who had something to prove, not to their boss, but to themselves. Rick Baker had barely taken a day off since the inspection. He'd spent the weekend scrubbing the place from top to bottom, updating records, and rereading the entire state compliance manual for the first time since opening the shop. Every page was a reminder of how careless he'd become. He didn't yell as much now, didn't crack jokes at the expense of others. Instead, he worked quietly, methodically, side by side with his crew. When Joe, his lead mechanic, found him on the floor, fixing a safety guard on one of the lifts, he blinked. "Boss, you don't have to do that. I can handle it." Rick shook his head. "Nope. If I'm the one who let it slide, I'm the one fixing it." By midweek, new fire extinguishers hung on every wall. Fresh safety posters replaced the faded ones, and every oil drum was sealed tight and properly labeled. The employees even took a mandatory safety refresher, something Rick used to call a waste of time. Carla, the receptionist, noticed the change too. She caught Rick one morning double-checking an invoice for recycled coolant, a task he usually brushed off. "You're really taking this serious, huh?" she said. Rick looked up from the paperwork. "Yeah," he said simply. "It's about time I did." She smiled faintly. "You think the inspector'll notice?" Rick nodded. That's the point. The shop ran smoother than it had in years, but beneath the productivity was something else. A quiet guilt that Rick couldn't shake. He kept replaying Derek Lawson's words in his mind. "When you see a man in overalls, don't assume he works for you." Those words had stripped him bare. He thought about how many times he'd made snap judgments, not just about Derek, but about countless customers who didn't look like money. He realized how easily he'd worn his pride like armor, mistaking arrogance for authority. 2 weeks later, the follow-up inspection notice arrived. Same inspector, same time. Rick folded the letter carefully, then placed it on the counter. "All right," he told his crew, "let's make sure this place is the cleanest damn shop in Texas." When Friday came, the sky was gray and heavy with the promise of rain. Derek Lawson arrived right on time. Same calm stride, same clipboard, same unreadable composure. This time, Rick met him at the door before he even reached for the handle. "Morning, Inspector," Rick said respectfully. "Glad to have you back." Derek gave a small nod. "Morning, Mr. Baker. Let's see how things look." They walked through the shop again, but this time, the silence felt different. Not tense, but thoughtful. Derek checked the new fire extinguishers, the sealed oil drums, the safety tags. He glanced at the employee training certificates posted neatly on the bulletin board. Rick followed, answering every question without excuses or deflection. Finally, Derek stopped by the office window, flipping through his notes. "Everything seems in order," he said. "You corrected all compliance issues and documented the changes properly." Rick nodded, his voice low. "I told you I would." Derek looked up at him. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Then Derek said, "You took it seriously." Rick gave a faint, tired smile. "I did. You were right. This isn't just about rules. It's about respect." "I'd forgotten that." Derek studied him for a moment, then nodded. "That's good to hear." He signed the final page of his form, tore off the top copy, and handed it to Rick. "You're in full compliance now. No further action required." Rick took the paper, relief washing through him. But also something deeper, heavier, like humility, finally settling into place. "Thank you," he said sincerely. "And not just for the paperwork." Derek gave a small smile. "You earned it, Mr. Baker." He started toward the door, but Rick called out, "Hey, wait a sec." Derek turned. Rick hesitated, then extended his hand. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry for the way I treated you that first day. I was ignorant. Won't happen again." Derek looked at his hand for a moment, then shook it. Firm, respectful. That's all a man needs to say sometimes. As he stepped out into the rain, Rick watched him go. For a long while, he stood at the doorway, the gray clouds reflected in the puddles of the parking lot. He wasn't proud of how it started, but he was proud of how it ended. That afternoon, he called a quick meeting with his staff. "From now on," he said, "every person who walks through that door, I don't care if they're in overalls, a suit, or covered in mud, they get treated with the same respect you'd give me. Understood?" His team nodded. Joe grinned. You got it, boss." As the day wound down, Rick looked around the shop, cleaner, quieter, steadier. The walls no longer felt like a cage of pride, but a space of purpose. He picked up his wrench, smiled faintly, and whispered to himself, "Lesson learned." And somewhere down the road, Derek Lawson drove toward his next inspection, knowing that for once, a man didn't just fix his shop, he fixed his heart. 3 months passed since the inspection that changed everything at Baker's Auto Service. The shop had become almost unrecognizable, not from renovations or fancy signs, but from the quiet pride that now filled the place. The walls gleamed, the tools were organized, and the team worked together like a tuned engine. Customers noticed too. "Your guys are different now," one woman said as she picked up her car. "Feels more professional." Rick smiled, wiping his hands on a clean rag. "We're trying to do things right," he said simply. He no longer judged people by how they looked when they walked through the door. It didn't matter if someone came in wearing boots, heels, or overalls. Every customer was treated like someone who mattered. And every time he saw a clipboard, he couldn't help but think of Derek Lawson. One bright Saturday morning, the shop was hosting its first Community Safety Day, a new idea of Rick's. Free brake checks, tire inspections, and car seat safety demos for local families. It wasn't about business. It was about giving back, about showing the kind of respect he'd once withheld. Joe was setting up cones outside, Carla handed out coffee, and kids ran around the lot chasing each other between the cars. The smell of grilled hot dogs mixed with motor oil in the air. Around 11 o'clock, a sleek black SUV pulled into the lot. The state emblem glinted on the door. Rick froze for a moment, then broke into a smile. Derek Lawson stepped out, this time in a plain polo shirt and jeans, not his inspector uniform. Still composed, still steady, but with the faintest grin. "Mr. Lawson," Rick said, stepping forward with genuine warmth. "They didn't expect to see you here." "Was in the area," Derek said. "Heard about your community event. Thought I'd stop by and see it for myself." Rick chuckled. "You inspecting again?" "Not today," Derek said with a hint of humor. "Just visiting." Rick waved him inside. "Come on, you got to see what we've been doing." As they walked through the shop, Derek noticed the changes. The safety charts framed neatly, the equipment labeled and spotless, the employees greeting him respectfully. No tension this time. No pretense. Just respect. "You've done good work here," Derek said finally. Rick nodded. "Thanks to you." They stepped outside to where a small crowd had gathered, customers, neighbors, even a few city officials. Rick cleared his throat. "Hey folks," he called out. "Before we wrap up today, I just want to say something real quick." The chatter died down. Rick looked toward Derek, then back at the crowd. "A few months ago, I learned a hard lesson. One I won't forget. I met a man who walked in here one morning and I didn't give him the respect he deserved. Judged him before he said a word. Turned out, that man had more integrity and professionalism than I'd shown in years." He paused, his voice steady but humble. "That man reminded me what this shop's supposed to stand for. Honesty, respect, and doing things right, even when no one's watching. He's the reason we're here today, trying to do better for our customers and our community." He turned toward Derek. "Mr. Lawson, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you gratitude." The crowd murmured, surprised but moved. Derek gave a small nod, visibly humbled. "You don't owe me anything, Mr. Baker," he said quietly. "You did the work." Rick smiled. "Yeah, but sometimes it takes someone holding up a mirror to make you see what you really look like." There was a ripple of applause, small at first, then growing. Some clapped for the honesty, others for the courage it took to say it publicly. Derek extended his hand. "You've come a long way." Rick shook it firmly. "Still got more to go." They both laughed. Two men who'd started on opposite sides of judgment, now standing shoulder to shoulder in respect. As the crowd dispersed, Derek turned to leave, but not before glancing back. "You ever think about training apprentices?" Rick raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, maybe." "Why?" Derek smiled. "The state's launching a mentorship program for small business owners. Might be good to have someone like you on the list." Rick's eyes widened slightly. "Me?" "You've got the experience," Derek said. "And now, the right attitude." Rick chuckled. "Well, I'll be damned. Guess life really does give second chances." Derek nodded. "If you're willing to take them." He walked back to his SUV and drove off, leaving Rick standing in the lot, the sound of laughter and engines filling the air. Rick watched him go, then turned to his crew and smiled. "All right, boys," he said. "Let's get back to work. We've got a reputation to live up to." And as the sunlight glinted off the freshly painted sign reading, "Baker's Auto, honest work, Fair hands. Rick felt something he hadn't felt in years. Real pride. Not in what he owned, but in who he'd become.